Well, I guess we'll just begin by saying welcome, Louise Penny, to Kolbe Times. We're very
Thank you,
excited
Laura.
to join
No,
you.
I'm thrilled to be here, and thank you for getting up so early to do this.
A pleasure. And may I just start off by saying that I am a member of your legion of fans around the world, and I just finished reading The Madness of Crowds. Well, I shouldn't say reading, because you know what I did? I got an audiobook from the library. So Robert Bathurst, I had him read it to me.
Yeah, isn't he lovely? He's become a friend. He's just such a nice man. Do you do audiobooks often?
I just started recently, because one thing I was a teacher in a former life. I was also a journalist too for a long time with the Calgary Herald and Edmonton Journal. But I worked with homeschooling families, and I did a lot of driving to their homes to give them some help and check on how they were doing. And so I started doing audiobooks then and loved it. But then I kind of stopped, and now I'm starting again because I like Robert so much, I think.
Oh, good. Oh, I'm glad. I'll have to let him know. Yes, it's always good to give feedback.
And I also wanted to say I had one experience we have in common is I had a mother who passed away in 2012 who loved Agatha Christie and who introduced me to Agatha Christie. And it was such a bond between us, you know. Yes. And also I introduced her to Dorothy Sayers, so Lord Peter Wimsey. And
I had a crush on Lord Peter.
Oh, me too. I used to dream about him. I wanted to be Harriet so badly.
No, I stopped reading when he met Harriet. I thought, that's awful. How could he do that to me?
Yes.
I'm jealous.
I'll have to pick it up again. Because Harriet, actually, I grew to love Harriet after I forgave her. Well, I just also wanted to say that I think beyond what we share, that I've just spoken about, my mother also developed Alzheimer's in her later years. So I know my dad and I and my siblings, went through heartache and figuring it all out. So that really resonates with me. Your story with Michael too. So. So I was wondering if we could start with you telling me the wonderful story and telling our subscribers the wonderful story of how you came to realize you wanted to be a writer. I think it had something to do with a spider.
Yes. And some pig.
Yes, and a pig.
I was just a really fearful child. I've been one of the great gifts and unexpected of the writing life. And I thought the best gift was going to be to see my name on a book, which actually was really pretty cool. But the thing that was unexpected was how many writers I met and became friends with, good friends. And so we talk a lot, of course, about, our fears and the process and how things are going and our fears and our fears and our fears. And one thing that became clear through talking with other writers is how common it is. Many of us are introverted. Many of us were fearful children, often lonely children. So we ended up with a really rich imaginary life. And that was certainly true for me. So the only place I ever really felt safe and in control was alone in my bedroom reading. And I realized I wanted to be a writer when I was reading Charlotte's Web. You're quite right, the spider. And I was afraid, as I said, of everything, but mostly of spiders. And I was about halfway through Charlotte's Web when I realized that I love Charlotte and I didn't want anything bad to happen to her. And in that moment, my biggest fear was lifted. And it was for a child whose whole day is prescribed by fears and trying to go from the least fearful to the least fearful to the least fearful. To have the biggest fear lifted was magic and power. And I understood the power rested in the story and the power of words and the power of storytelling. And so I knew I would be a lifelong reader from that moment on, but I understood that if reading was that powerful, then writing must be as well. So that actually went hand in hand with another moment of clarity, which of revelation, which was in Canada, as you probably know and remember, we mostly read dead white English writers, mostly men. So it was a shock to read. Oh my God, I'm just blanking on his name. Never Cry Wolf. Gosh. Anyway, the name will come to me. This is terrible. But to realize that it's possible to be Canadian, alive, and a writer all at the same time. And so I realized if he can do it, Farley Mowat, then
of course, yes,
so can I. And so from that moment on, I realized you don't have to be dead and British and a man to write a book.
Right. And so then you went into journalism, of course.
Of course. So from then I did not write. And radio journalism, which is, it's still obviously journalism, but it's not, writing long, not like what you did. I wasn't writing long articles. If in radio journalism, if you have an adjective in there, that's considered verboten. So, but what it did do, among many things, and I loved it, and I got to work in some really interesting places, Thunder Bay and Winnipeg and Quebec City. And what I got to do was listen to people, listen to their stories, and get a sense of how people react to situations that I had never myself been in. And I got to see people. I mean, no one ends up on a CBC radio program because nothing is happening in their life, unless it's a phone in which case there's a lot of that happening. But for the most part, these are people in extreme circumstances, either extremely good or extremely bad. And so it was really fascinating to spend 20 years with people who are in the extreme. And I think that, first of all, it suited me because I think it becomes self-selecting. I being an introvert, I certainly was better at listening than at talking. And I think for the most part, writers are probably not the gabbiest people in the room. Some are, but for the most part, not. But it certainly fed a lot of the people who became my characters.
Right. I know that was also a dark time in your life as well. You've spoken very openly and may I say very courageously about your drinking problem during those.
Yes. Well, I think that stemmed from, I'm now a member of a 12-step program and have been for almost 30 years now. But it stemmed, there's a lot of theories. It's an emotional disease, the disease of the emotions. It's the symptom. The disease itself is all about, not being able to cope. Very few people drink to the point of passing out, again, because good things are happening in their life. There's generally not only bad things, but a failure to meet them head on. So that also has really informed my writing. Is that there's the line from Leonard Cohen about there's a crack in everything. Ring the bells that still can ring. Forget your perfect offering. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. And I thought, in many ways, I was raised to believe I had to be perfect, and of course, you can't be. And that inability to be perfect led to terror that I would be judged and judged badly and judge myself badly. And so I sort of drank to numb all of that and never really had to face my fears. And then I hit bottom, and my bottom is very prosaic. Having listened to a lot of people's stories, which is such a gift that people are so courageous to share, many of them are quite dramatic. Sort of interesting. Mine was not. Mine was I was just standing in the middle of my bedroom and paralyzed. I was 35 and I couldn't go forward and I couldn't go back. And I was afraid I was going to kill myself because I couldn't imagine living another month with that sort of chasm, that kind of loneliness, that hole in my soul. Never mind, I wasn't even halfway through life, another 35, 40, 50 years like that. I used to look at elderly people and wonder how they did it. How do you get to that age? And how do you smile? I had no friends. I had friends I pretended to have. When people at work, you would ask, how was my weekend? I would make it up, poor ones. I'd go on a great length about imaginary things that happened to me. And they're like, oh, we're not actually that interested. So I realized, if I'm willing to kill myself, then surely I'm willing to try to get sober. So I went to my first 12-step meeting and met these two women who joined me at the table. And they sat across from, they welcomed me and were very warm, but they never once asked me, about myself. What they did was, and they were very welcoming. It wasn't like I was excluded, but they talked about their own drinking. And for me, that was a revelation. Here were two smart, clearly joyous women who were talking about my greatest shame openly, like it wasn't something to be shameful of. And I suddenly thought, oh my God, there's a path forward. And I just have to take the 12 steps, which turned out to be simple, but not easy. And that, from that moment on, what I got was hope. And I never drank again. Never drank again. From that moment in that church basement, I never drank again. And it's informed, obviously, all my books. Anyone who's been in a 12-step program and reads my books, I think would recognize that the courage, the power of forgiveness, the difficulty of forgiveness, the joy of finding community, the yearning for company, to belong. That phrase at the front of many of the meetings is a phrase on the desk that says, "You are not alone. You are not alone." I think if there was that, and goodness exists would be, the catchphrases, the leitmotif that goes through all of my books. You are not alone.
Interesting, isn't it, how the threads of our lives, weave this, are going somewhere. Really
yes, and the things that so often we think are the very worst things turn out to be the very best. If we don't run away, if we can stand still and let it like all the merit wash over us.
And I know the lesson of, asking for help, right?
Yes. Oh, that's a really good point, Laura. That's an excellent. I mean, none of this would have happened if help hadn't been there. If I hadn't asked for it, and if generous, patient, kind people hadn't reached down for me and kept at it, because someone who's just trying to put their life together is not necessarily a pleasant person to be around.
And shortly after that, getting sober, you met Michael on a blind date.
On a blind date, within a year, within days, I went from wanting to die to wanting to live. And I realized I never really wanted to die. I just didn't know how to live. And I just wanted the pain to end, which it eventually obviously did. And so within a year, I went from this complete mess to finding my soulmate, to being in love. And it wasn't like a hostage taking like it might have been when I was drinking. This was I want to say a meeting of equals. And I think it probably was. We were very different, and we gave each other different things and respected that in each other. So I met the love of my life, and we ended up marrying, and he ended up inspiring the Gamache character. And no Michael, no books. That is very clear to me.
Tell us a little bit about him. He was a hematologist, I believe.
Yes, a hematologist at the. He was actually studied as an adult hematologist, but he was offered the position to head up after a number of years, to head up the Montreal Children's Hematology Oncology Department, which he did, and became also a senior researcher in North America into childhood leukemia, working with a drug called methotrexate, which is also used for arthritis and other things. But he was a senior investigator with the pediatric oncology group, and just kindly, happy man. And you wonder, this is part of what I try to instill in Gamache is that he's a happy person, not despite all of the horrid things he sees, the terrible deaths. but because of it, and because he understands what a gift life is. And Michael taught me that as well. He would come home after. Can you imagine being a pediatric oncologist? I mean, having to sit, we used to go on Christmas Day, he would be Santa Claus because he looked a lot like Santa, actually. And I would be Mrs. Claus, and we would sit by the beds of, these poor sick children who couldn't go home. And you have to be pretty darn sick not to be sent home, at least for the day, and their families. And he was just so lovely and so caring and so kind and brilliant. And the patients loved him. And he would wear a bow tie. I mean, he was always a bow tie guy, but the bow ties he would wear to work had Donald Duck and Mickey Mouse and butterflies on them. And at one stage I asked him why. And he said that so when he leaned over the kids, first of all, the tie wouldn't hit their faces, a long time, but they would see Mickey Mouse. They would see these cartoon characters and be less afraid. But he would come home from work having like the worst day ever. And be happy. And he was happy because he knew that life is a gift, and what a betrayal it would be of these young lives if those of us who do get to have gray in our hair don't live the life we've been given with joy, with courage, with awareness of how lucky we are, with gratitude. We don't live it fully and genuinely. And he did, right up to his last breath. He lived life with joy and genuinely.
And I know he developed Alzheimer's in his sleep.
Well, it wasn't, I mean, it's actually dementia. He didn't actually have Alzheimer's. He had another form of dementia, which they were never able to, as I found out, dementia is the umbrella term. Alzheimer's is one of a number of the diseases. There's Lewy body and there are other types of dementia. Never figured out what. The best thing, Laura, I mean, this sounds ridiculous, but I know you've been through it and it's tragic, but there are moments that are just hilarious. And what it was also just clarifying. Life became difficult, but very simple. Nothing mattered. Is Michael happy? Is he safe? Is Michael happy? Is he safe? That's all that mattered. All the other shit. Oh, oops, crap, whatever. That does tend to confuse the day. Just fell by the wayside. And so it became very simple. And we had a lot of laughs and a lot of reason to laugh, God knows. I mean, within the realm of it being difficult. But the great gift we had is that the first thing that seemed to have gone for Michael was his awareness that he had dementia. So I remember driving back out here with him after we'd been to a doctor's appointment and asking him, said, "No, so Michael, do you think, has anything changed for you? Like, do you feel any different? How are you doing?" And I said, "No, everything's exactly the same." Well, by then he couldn't do up his shoe. He couldn't do up his ties. He couldn't, none of that was happening, but he was blissfully unaware. So he was happy. He just got happier, and a man who started off happy became happier and happier.
Wow.
I'm lucky. I know that. I mean, within the realm, anyone listening who's been through it understands how lucky I am. We had the resources to keep him at home, and it took a lot of resources. I was younger, considerably younger, so I could physically look after him. And he wasn't a wanderer. He didn't get angry. He all these other things that other people have experienced. So we were blessed in every way. And it still brought me to my knees. So in fact, right now, I'm in the process of trying to set up respite care here for the people who are suffering, but mostly for the caregivers, because if you go under, nothing good happens.
It's almost tearing me up because I remember too with my mom how she became the focus for our family, my siblings and my dad and I, and it was a focus of love. And it's just exactly what you're saying. It was all about how's mom doing. and it brought us together, my siblings and I, so much closer.
Oh,
Had this,
wonderful.
this focus, and just like you say, some hilarious times. I remember going shopping with her, and she'd be regaling the sales clerks with these absolute lies about. And we just go along with it, whatever. That she was visiting here from, anyway. But the other, I guess I would say, miracle that happened was that you moved very early in your marriage to the Eastern Townships. And
yes,
what a
you've clearly done your homework.
To your life.
Geez, I'm not able to lie to you. You've obviously done your research. Oh, well. Yes. Yeah. No, it really is a series of, as we know, of things that appear unrelated that all had to really come together in order, for me to be sitting here with you today, like anybody's life, really. Yeah, we decided, this was Michael's second marriage. His first wife had died of lung cancer a few years earlier, and my first, but we were older. Michael was considerably older, and I was certainly well into my 30s. And we had lives of our own in Montreal, but we had to figure out how to combine them so that there wasn't a sense of superior ownership. So when Michael went into semi-retirement, we decided to sell the home in Montreal and move down to the Eastern Townships. And we bought the place because we liked the home, which was out. It's not the place I'm in now, but out in the country. We loved the home. It never even occurred to us that maybe we want to check out what the community was like. So, now I realize that's really should be job one, is figuring out, is this a place where you think you can live, where you're going to be happy, where you think you might find some friends, rent maybe for a little while, do something. Don't just buy because the house is pretty. Because I realize, like most people, I could live in a dump if I have, a good community around me. I say that. The reality is my surroundings mean a lot more to me than they meant to Michael. Michael could live in a dump. He could live in a bin and be absolutely happy. I would need to put up some nice curtains in the bin or something. But yes, we moved out here, and that became then the template for Three Pines.
Right. I've heard you say your books are a love story to the Eastern Townships.
Yes. Yeah. And not just certainly to the Eastern Townships. Absolutely. Because this is my home, and I travel a lot, and I've been fortunate enough to have homes elsewhere. But this is home. This is where my feet bring me back, and where I know I've finally got the roots I've yearned for all my life, and they are here in the Eastern Townships. But they're also here in Quebec. That I'd spent a long time sort of looking for home. Where's home? Where's home? And I found it here in Quebec, which was unlikely as an essentially unilingual Anglo. But so yeah, they're love letters to the Eastern Townships, to Quebec, and to the joy of finding home.
And Michael really was the catalyst too for you finally writing.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. Well, that and the that last sovereignty referendum. Really, I have the PACUS to thank for that too, because that was an awful situation. I was hosting that night on air, live on air, and we were told that the no side, which was the Federalist side, would lose, and Quebec would become sovereign. And it was so close. It was so close that everybody came away shattered and bruised, and nobody was happy. Nobody felt like a victor. And it just, for me, that was just, I can't keep doing this. I talked before about the joy of listening to people, which is true, but for the most part, what you're listening to are people complaining, and bad things have happened. And I began to get the worldview that something bad was just around the corner if it wasn't already happening. And that simply isn't true. But it wasn't making me happy or fulfilled. So I needed to quit. And Michael knew that. And he said one day, if you want to quit work in order to write that book, I'll support you. And he meant it. Mm-hmm. Thank God he also meant financially. which he did and had to for way longer than he thought he'd have to.
And you also, I think, I love this story because, again, it really resonates with me of meeting this group of women. I'm part of a book club and slash, we pray for each other because we all seem to, but we've been meeting for decades on Friday mornings. And, it's what a blessing it has been in life, just like a little one of those anchors, I know what I'm doing Friday morning. But you met les girls, right?
Les girls, yes, exactly. And this was something that, again, when I was drinking and getting lonelier and lonelier, I didn't like other women. I thought other women were, I was in competition with them. I was jealous of them. I was judgmental of them. I was afraid of being judged by them. Certain I was. Of course, nobody's paying that close attention. I didn't understand what I was missing until I got sober and met in the program a bunch of really people who were still close friends. But outside of that, when Michael and I moved here, I was invited to join, and they didn't know me. All they knew was that I was sort of struggling to write. I was asked to join Les Girls, and this was a variety of women who were doing a variety of things, but all in the creative realm. So they were poets and visual artists and dancers and musicians and all sorts of things. So we'd get together and discuss process. But I wasn't writing at the time, and I had to explain I'm not producing. And they said, "Well, do you consider yourself a writer?" And I had to think. I said, "Yes, I do." And they said, "Then you are. Only you get to decide. No one else gets to define who you are. If you say you're a writer, if you feel you're a writer, even if you never write a word, you're still a writer and you're welcome to it." And I was suffering from writer's block at the time. And I saw them take chances that I wasn't willing to take. And that is to produce and to put it out into the world and to risk the judgment of others. And I saw some triumphs and I saw some things that could not be considered triumphs. But mostly what I saw was that, yeah, we all want to be great successes and be applauded, but it didn't kill these women to not be, to have something fall flat. What was killing me was not taking that risk. And so they gave me the courage to just put it out there and let the chips fall where they may.
And just write what you want to write.
Yeah. But that's it. Just write for myself. Write a book I would read and not worry that other people may not. And this sort of goes hand in hand with another revelation, and that is that there's nothing different about me. I am right in the middle of the bell curve. If I like something, there's a pretty good chance other people are going to like it. If I don't like something, yeah, it's maybe, not the most popular thing in the world. So there was a pretty good chance if I wrote a book I would read, others might too.
Where you were obviously correct. I mean, wow, here we are, I was going to say 17 books later, but 18 books later.
Yes, I just finished the 18th, yes.
And, translated into over 30 languages. And oh my goodness.
Yeah, none of them Pig Latin either.
Right. And, I think it's exactly what you're saying. It's the depth and the richness of your books. It's just, you're always touching on the human condition, aren't you? I heard you say one time that the crime or the murder in your books is like the Trojan horse, really, isn't it?
Right,
Yeah.
right. I remember
what you mean by that.
when I just finished with the first draft of Still Life, and which is the first book in the series. And nobody was interested in it. I sent it out all over the place, and nobody was interested in it. But one local publisher here in Quebec, I sent it to, and then met with him at this sort of writers' conference thing, and he said, "No, I'm not interested." He said for a number of reasons, but I'm just not going to do it. And so we were cordial, and I'm walking away, and I get in the elevator, and as the elevator is closing, he yells at me. He said, "One thing I need to know is, what's the book about?" And then the doors close. I think, well, you not just read it. I mean, how can you not know what it's about? It's a murder mystery. It's about a murder. And then it took me a long time to figure out what he was saying. But a book can't be about murder. A murder is an act. It has to be about something, and something from inside me. It has to matter to me. And so I rewrote the book, and it became about something else. And each book is about something, with that thread going through it, about gratitude, about forgiveness, about belonging.
Mm-hmm. I think it's, I don't know, it's almost like we're all trying to find this spiritual balance somewhere, we want to be kind and decent, and we want to listen, and we want to not make judgments prematurely.
And not judge ourselves too, because I find I can, because I'm not, God knows there are days, and certainly moments within days, when I am not my best person, my best self. And, I can't just beat myself up about that. And you go and you make amends or do whatever is necessary, which is, eating crow is not the nicest thing. But, gosh, it's human. It's human to be jealous. It's human to be angry. It's human to be all of those things, and not to feel like I'm less than because of all of that.
Mm-hmm. And just, I think that's it strikes such a chord with all this issue right now. We're trying our best, and we fail.
Yeah.
And we try again, and just looking for the goodness, right? That's a big
and understanding that we're good too. We're not always good all the time. We're not always happy all the time, but at rest, that's what we want to be. Mm-hmm. And I think most people, I know most people are. Most people want to be inspired. Most people want to be decent and kind and good. Even people, I think of the people who are on the far other end of the political spectrum than me. But I know for sure that if I knocked on their door and I needed help, they would help me. And I would help them. And that's who we are at our core.
Well, this has been a busy year for you. I happened to catch the CBS mornings with Gail King. Is that?
Yes.
Hillary and you being interviewed. It was so lovely just to see you were just two friends, right? Just laughing.
Oh, we have a blast. I don't think people realize how funny she is and how much she loves, and what a hoot. I mean, literally a hoot of a laughter. You can't mistake that from across a room. It's nice that we are just, she never comes to me for political advice, nor should she.
Even after co-writing this book, you're still
no, exactly. And I don't necessarily go to her for writing advice either, but we have a whole lot of other common ground.
Wow, what a miracle that is too, that whole coming. I know a mutual friend of yours.
That's right. It was again through a mutual friend, and through just luck or fate or the smiling of the universe that when asked what book they're reading, they happened to be reading one of mine, and that just started the whole thing off. And then she lost the election. I know for sure, had she won the election, I think the world would be in a better place, but also we probably wouldn't have been friends, because she'd been a little bit too busy to bond with a little old Canadian. And I just lost Michael and Hillary, and we'd never met. Hillary and I had met. She'd read my books. We'd never corresponded. We'd nothing. She was just a reader of the books. And Michael died, and I posted about it. And she wrote me, not an email, a letter, and about Michael. She had obviously done the research about his work on pediatric oncology, his work as a scientist. He was the first named professor in Canada in pediatric hematology, a full professor at McGill in medicine. Just his achievements. And she wrote about that, and a lovely letter about loss. And again, we hadn't met. She was in the throes of this horrific political battle for the presidency of the United States. And she takes time to write to a Canadian who can't vote. She'd never met me. There was nothing in it for her. It was an act of pure kindness.
And the book is doing so well. That's another miracle coming together.
Yeah, yes. Oh yeah. And then clicking, because again, we were just two women of a similar age who had been shattered, and were trying to put the pieces back together again in some form that was even better than the original.
Well, I just want to close by saying that you've got a lot going on coming up with your book, World of Curiosities, coming out in November, I believe.
It is. Good for you. November 29th. Exactly. Number 18.
Yeah, number 18. And also the drama, Three Pines.
Oh, the TV show.
Yes. The TV.
Yes. They're filming it about half an hour from here, and it's a UK company that did The Crown. I'll be curious to see what the readers think of it. They've cast beautifully. Alfred Molina is going to be Gamache, and he's superb. And so, if they had to get honestly one thing right, they had to get that right, and they did.
Well, in the new year, streaming on Amazon Prime.
Yeah, on Prime, and it's going to be, we think, sometime in December. I'm not totally sure when, but sometime it takes a while to put it all together. Apparently, I'm learning a lot.
How are you doing with all this going on and coming up?
Oh, well, it's very, the thing is, Laura, I have to sit down quietly and say to myself, appreciate this, because one day it'll be over. But it's just so many wonderful things happening one after another. And my fear is not appreciating it the way it should be, because it sounds ridiculous, but to have, so many wonderful things, and to have my health, and to have, a community I love, and friends around me, and financial stability, which is, I don't, like so many people have to worry. I don't. So just, there's so many blessings. So I'm doing very well. And I think the best gift, that song, if you're happy and you know it, clap your hands. Clearly the gift is knowing it. I always had blessings. I just didn't realize it. Now I do.
Any last words of advice for us fearful ones?
Oh, I wish I would. No, are you fearful?
2 a.m. I'm fearful and worrying.
Oh, what scares you?
I think it's just, I just ruminate. I ruminate on all these, the worst that could happen. So I need to somehow switch that to.
Yeah. What I do at 2 a.m. is I repeat the Serenity Prayer. And that is very helpful. God grant me the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. And I find that very calming, because I realize so much is out of my control, and just go back to sleep. The world will be fine. And the wisdom to know the difference, but also courage. A lot of the getting sober is all about courage. It's now near my front door. It used to be right in front of me at the other house, as I wrote the last words of the poet Seamus Heaney, who on his deathbed said to his wife, "Noli timere," which means be not afraid. And so every day I wake up and I say, don't be afraid, don't be afraid. I've enjoyed this.
Thank you so much.